everything about in the industries always will be about consumers. And there I was constantly thinking that, healthcare is going to explode in India. Healthcare in India is very episodic. It is not necessary that if you plan family only, then you should require a fertility score. Although young generation or Gen Z is still trying to keep in touch, they are far more alert than the previous generation. Where the game changed actually, it's not just what COVID happened, the fact that data became cheaper.
Hey there, welcome to Marketing Mavericks with IndieFolio. Today we have Nishant Mishra joining us, who's the Group Chief Marketing Officer at Apollo Health. Nishant's career spans over 2 decades, where he's worked with some really incredible companies like Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages, Dr. Batras, Rainbow Hospitals, and now, of course, Apollo. I'm excited to unpack his journey today and also learn a lot about marketing and healthcare in India. Thanks a lot for your time, Nishant, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for the intro. I think you put it quite nicely. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Happy to unravel my own journey with you.
I don't think the intro does justice. If I wanted to, I could talk on it for a long, long time. But
Uh,
I'll hop into it immediately, Nishant. The first question I have, which I love to ask our guests, is how did you stumble upon marketing as a career choice? Is it something you had it in school? Did you develop it in your professional career? I'd love to know more.
wow. So I guess, Kavan, it started long back, and I don't know exactly when thing hit me that this is it for me, or this is the function, or this is the way for me. I trace it. I've multiple times tried to myself trace it back. And what I've realized is in the early 90s, you had the movement of Star and the international channels coming into India through satellite television. And prior to that, the ads used to be a little kind different kind of ads, which were pretty, if you see the ad in Indian television, Doordarshan, that is, we used to have pretty decent sort of ads, pretty native, connecting to our home life, etc., etc. First time, I mean, I was a fan of a lot of Hollywood movies, but I never saw them in a commercial sort of way, in a sense, of short commercials, etc. I'd never seen them. So I got hooked on to MTV because that was the happening channel back then, and saw the ad of. Incidentally, I saw the ad of Coke multiple times, and I started kind of enjoying it because they were. So what essentially was there is that connect with the people it had, especially my age group, because it was catering to my age group, and I did realize it quite later on why I connected with it so much, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. And what I liked about it is the lightness, the humor, obviously very short time connect and all. And somewhere I think that would have sparked something. I don't know. I can't actually put finger on it. Then I got on to my studies, and when I completed my MBA from Pune, I did happen to have marketing as my core. Possibly two professors, two of my teachers influenced it. One of Dr. Sarvate was there, who was he's actually almost the father of market research in India. And amazingly, he was teaching us in when I was doing my MBA in Pune, and he gave some cited some lovely examples. And since we are the early batches of MBA, we didn't have a lot of studies coming out of Indian markets. Most of the studies were US markets or international markets. So we couldn't connect really how consumers responded to a certain product or a service or whatever it is. But when Dr. Savate spoke, he cited a lot of Indian examples, saying that I was the first one to do the study on egg powder in India. And he was the first one who actually kind of exposed us to the Indian markets. And we started realizing that, yeah, it's not all about American products or US products or products made in Japan. We are the consumers. So it's all about us eventually. It's not. If the products are served to us, we make the choice. So I started realizing the power of consumer marketing and the beauty that lies in it. And the fact is, mostly it's just like a movie that you are trying to make. You're trying to make a product which may or may not serve your TG. Sometimes your TG may connect to something very brilliantly. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. So that was a point I got influenced by his thought process and the way he spoke about his studies into the Indian market. And sincerely speaking, that was the first time I heard about somebody doing studies in India. Otherwise, all case studies from the books that we picked up, whether it is Kotler or whatever, everything that was cited was US markets or international markets per se. So that's where the initial build-up happened, and I started more and more leaning towards marketing. I knew at that time you are mostly just picking whatever's coming your way, because the fact that in those days there were not a lot of companies that were there in corporate market. You had the bigger brands, and then you had very few local Indian companies which were trying to, start up very smaller setups, not big ones. So I think the turning point happened when I got into Coke very early on in my career, and I saw with a publication group called Dainik Bhaskar, and I was with them. So obviously, I understood a little bit about advertising in a print media then, and somehow through that channel, I once hit upon somebody, and the Coke thing happened, and once Coke happened, that whole unraveling of consumerism or consumer market happened, and that's where the two things connected. What I studied in my MBA and what Coke spoke about India. Coke was totally driven by consumer research. So Nielsen did the consumer audits, and marketing became as interesting as possibly a sales, because sales guys always had numbers to talk about. You had achievement targets, delivery time, shipping, blah blah blah. But marketing became interesting because I also understood keeping a tap on market share, whether it is against the immediate competition Pepsi then. That's where it got firmed up that, this is where I would like to stay. And during those days, this was way back in 2002, we had the Coke pesticide issue happening. I mean, it was rather the beverage industry's pesticide. And that every time you hit a calamity, something, this sort of huge thing comes your way, which is negatively impacting your brand for a certain period of time. But marketing gets a lot of focus because the company looked towards marketing to reestablish the brand and the credibility. It cannot be done through any other function because you are the face connecting to the consumer. So that's where I think it kind of even formed up the fact that I am on the right path. Maybe this has hit my way. I joined Coke in about 7 months. It happened. Pesticide.
Wow.
All hell broke loose. I mean, it was like crazy. We were like on the receiving end of just about everything in India. People were washing their toilets with our beverage and whatnot, and people were saying the teeth gets dissolved in Coke. And I mean, you cannot imagine what all stories. I mean, even I think we would have discovered some usage of Coke there. So, so it was good, but those 5 6 months were like the most hottest period in marketing that I've seen. When one side you're fighting with the very negative sentiment that is getting created, and these were not the internet days, so there was no social media. So everything you try and push would take 24 hours to come to people because you had to wait till the time the print comes out. You have to wait till the time the commercial ad goes out and there is a favorite program running on TV that people might see. So that's the point. I think I started realizing that this function has power. It has merit. It's just that sometimes something comes your way, and that forms up your faith. And I got formed. My faith got formed up into marketing. I said, I am not leaving this function no matter what. And during the period, during the tenure, I had offers, which is like trying to tell me to get into other functions, which is all great. All functions are fantastic, and they contribute equally. But somehow I said that I want to take this journey through multiple industries because I want to discover my consumer through various products and services that they use, and try and see that whether whatever approach I'm taking, because even at that time, I was connecting myself back to my studies when I couldn't pick up any Indian example. And I said that the brilliant opportunity that lies herein is the fact that if I move across industries and I discover my own path of marketing and connecting to the consumer, that in turn can become a huge medium for me to, maybe later on teach or kind of connect or communicate to my predecessors who will come and get into this function. Because we are the ones who are facing this for the very first time, be it the pesticide issue. In fact, when the organized retail came into India, I jumped onto it because I wanted to. I was always very fascinated with organized retail. People spoke about 9/11s of US. People spoke about multiple organized trade brands in US, multi-format stores, and it was very exciting. I got into mobile store, which was a venture of SR Group. It was brilliant. It was insightful. We started realizing that what is the moment of truth when a consumer is purchasing or buying something. What all happens in the mind of the consumer because it was happening in front of us. Unlike Coke, where we had to guess and wait for the agency to give us data, they're saying that this is what happens. This was right in front of our eyes. When a guy picked up a phone, we could change the decision, influence the decision by giving him some right information. So it was like marketing, information, everything, sales was connecting, inventory was connecting. So that was
Right.
brilliant. And so that was retail. And I was with consumer retail for about 6 odd years, starting with mobile store. Incidentally, there we did I was part of a very amazing promo called the Rolls Royce promo. I don't know whether there is a section to talk about some promos that I did, but I can just give you small insights on it. Or what happened was that mobile retailing was very common, and even a corner shop was doing mobile retailing.
Mhm.
So we, as in promoters and all, were thinking that how can you create instant difference in the mind of a consumer, that how you're different from a regular shop. Regular shop can also at times give you bill, puts up an AC, etc. So how do you really match up or even up the experience? So we said that we kind of tell the consumer that buying at mobile store is almost buying like sitting in a Rolls Royce. So we said that the promo would be that the car would do rounds across the country. And wherever we have some consumer activation required, the car will go to that store. And wherever there is, and we connect on the spot, we used to connect. So, like, let's say somebody bought a mobile worth more than 10,000, he got a ride in Rolls. So, that was the whole mechanism. So, pretty
Wow.
simple. But to really use that Rolls as an asset, and we had the budgets then. And incidentally, this was also an offshoot of Richard Branson's Virgin Mobile. He was our brand partner, so he had
Okay.
all these ideas, very crazy, and but this is how the game actually happens. That when somebody gives you crazy ideas, and as I said, there is no fixed rule in marketing. There is nothing like fixed formula like a movie. Something works, some things connect, some things don't. But when they connect, when you start realizing the beauty in connecting with the consumer, whether he likes or she likes your promo or not, but that's the game, and that's really very satisfying when you see some of your ideas connecting and doing something for the brand and creating. So that was mobile store and the retail part of it. And
Fantastic.
that's incidentally that was a journey into marketing, but everything got formed up during those first initial years when I started understanding that I wanted to connect with the consumer, because I felt that everything about in the industries always will be about consumers.
Incredible. I think, I'm sure a lot of people are envious of your journey. I think getting inspired by MTV, learning from, an incredible professor, and then straight working in a company which is probably the one of the largest marketing led brands in the world, right? I think
I was
what a
fortunate.
better
Of course.
start and a launch pad to your career. I wanted to actually ask you a follow up on that, just because I'm super curious as someone who was literally doing 0 to 1 in marketing for India, right? What was how did you go about measuring, your marketing efficacy, right? Because today it's easy. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's fairly easy. There's a digital footprint. But I was just curious when a Richard Branson's putting in money in a JV with a large corp, or when a Coca Cola is spending a lot of money on high production ads, how do they measure efficacy? And especially when you're competing with sales, which has a very number driven approach. I was just
Yeah.
curious how you did that.
Well, you're absolutely right. In the initial years, let's say from early 2005 or 2010, we actually were not very data driven till the time we got into retail. Retail was everything was around sales and cross selling, and the fact that what is your point of sale items communicating, whether they're able to get the consumer to understand what is the value add that you're trying to build. So it was pretty near to the consumer. But as you went into the trade marketing, so trade marketing, Coke incidentally operated through the trade marketing route, because ideally it was actually B2B2C. So you had to sell to a retailer who would in turn sell to a consumer. So there, the game was basically a lot about your counter share, and so the data would be that how much your retailer is stocking your product, and that would in turn say that what's the preference, and that's in turn would be because of the marketing. So it was all a correlated data. It was not in your face kind of thing, or it was not that it was always available. We had to wait, but that was the yardstick that was available for us, saying that if the counter share is strong, if you see your product flying in the retail stock, that means there is consumer pull and your consumer is coming for and asking for demanding your product. And obviously, that was also driven by a lot of tactical discounting that retailers used to get from the brand. So it was not that totally the brand preference was there. It was smart selling. It was ensuring that your top contributing retailers in the city have higher share of yours. Plus, also since in the beverage industry everything is driven, mostly it's driven through association. Like you have an association affinity with cinema, you have an affinity with eating and drinking. So those channels essentially, those counter shares were monitored very carefully, saying that if you have a great restaurant, is Coke served with food or not? Is thumbs up served with food or not? Because that's where the consumer exercise their preference. And Coke is not a high involvement decision. Any beverage, it's a very low involvement decision. If it's there, consumer will have it, exercise the preference, or anything else will do. And that's where the change in preference starts happening. So you need to ensure that your availability is also cool. So it was a very good hand in hand of our trade marketing, trade sales, and then consumer. So those were the days, and that was the data that was basically kind of giving you the support that you are going the right way. Now you have, and in retail, obviously the data was available because you were managing the store. It was all yours end to end. There was no B2B2C. It was you and the C directly. The consumer was in your face. And you had the power of swaying the consumer preference because you had the Nokias of the world. It was incidentally telecom retail. So telecom retail was a very different game compared to a Coke because this was a high involvement product. You're looking at a lifestyle based product. You're looking at a product that's going to be involved in the life, and the guy gets a lot of enjoyment out of the product. So you had to yourself, your staff had to should know, must know the product features, etc. Blah blah blah. So hence the training got into picture. So every facet of business started coming in, but the data there was sales. Data there was the fact that how much of cross sales that you can do. What is your point of sale ammunition or the material that you've given? How much of power it has? Is it conveying enough? And obviously, our discoveries were there saying that what works, whether it's purely the discount that works on a handset, or it's the fact that I am able to give a better upgrade service to a newer device. So, a lot of things. But the data incidentally there in retail was sales. Because that would say, and because we didn't have much of a comparison like Coke versus Pepsi was there. In telecom retail, we had Subiksha, which kind of didn't survive for long. Then we had the smaller brands which were there, which were not like really available, like very very regional brands. Like we had I don't know, Universal in South. So some small bit of comparison, but there was not no comparison at a national level. So you were really driving the yardstick for your own self because we were the first mobile retail chain, multi-brand. There was no many big brands available. So incidentally, that was the game. So the data was the sales, and you were looking at that time. You were looking at reach, expanding, opening new and new stores in good catchments. Incidentally, that gave you the thrust on the sales part of it. So that was the trade marketing was different, and retail marketing was much different.
Got it. Got it. Fascinating. I think I wouldn't have expected those yardsticks you mentioned, at least sitting here today in 2024. So that was pretty insightful. I will jump now to 2012, where, you joined Dr. Batras and then you stuck to health for I think the last 10 plus years now. So what happened there? Why is it that, that's a focus area for you now? Curious to hear.
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess as I said that I wanted to move across industries, and I wanted to kind of understand the consumer through various products and services. So in case of Coke, it was a product. In case of mobile store or the retail or Planet M, it was a mix of product and service because you were selling, retailing a product. So both were involved. Batra happened because of one of my senior colleagues got into it and wanted me to join him there. And always wanted to understand all sorts of industries. So I said, yeah, let's get into it because I always believe that that's our laboratories are all out there. We are not incidentally, there is nothing sitting inside the computer. Everything is happening out there. So we really need to kind of connect with consumers with the best ways and across various industries so we understand the mindset. So got into healthcare, and I realized that how and healthcare also has various segments. Batra was totally into cosmetology because it was all about hair and skin. It was fast. The other side of healthcare, which is the hospitals, they have a little different setup. The Batras are most like an OP setup. You come in, you have a consultation with the doctor, the medicine is dispensed, and you go home. And incidentally, there is no IP, so there is no long stay there. So the connect is a little smaller in terms of time, very very little in terms of time. But yeah, but that journey started, and that's where also the digital explosion happened. Those years, e-commerce started playing a role. Google was strengthening up, and we were realizing that a lot of people are now sticking on to the web as a reference to search, and all of what internet was driven by search, which was incidentally Google. And search helped people make decisions, and they started understanding what a SEO is, and we in terms of for the consumer what is most important, how important it is to come on top, etc., etc. So digital marketing explosion in my journey started there from Dr. Butler's, because
Right.
those were the years when Google also started giving a lot of inputs. We were spending pretty heavy on digital, and while spending time there, I was constantly thinking that healthcare is going to explode in India, because the fact that you are a 150 crore population, and the fact that people are getting more conscious about health, because unlike the olden days, the newer age generation was exposed to a lot of stress. We had a very different kind of atmosphere, a lot of stress, pollution around you, and obviously that was taking a toll. And then you had a very kind of a tough life to keep up with your job, to keep up with your life goals, etc., etc. So I realized healthcare will be important. But the fact is, I also at that time did pay a lot of emphasis on health. And I realized that, so Dr. Batra was just cosmetology. And I was thinking that what if you move into a brand which is going to grow into a category which is not exploded as of now? Because even in mobile store, that was my thought, that get into a category which is not exploded as of now. So get onto it initially so that you are in the journey. So you are learning what's happening exactly, because at those times companies have a lot of budgets to spend. Because as you start to stabilize, the budget starts to diminish, because then you know that there is a way of doing business. But while discovering that way of business is where the fun lies. So I said that okay, I was looking at brands which are trying to invest in healthcare, and incidentally, about I was in Patras for almost about a couple of years, and then Rainbow happened, and that was the fact that I realized that this is the point, because Rainbow was a pediatric setup. Pediatric hospitals were not heard of in India. We hardly had any in Bombay. I was based out of Bombay in Patras. We hardly had any in Bombay. You had none in Delhi. Very small setups were there, but not dedicated children's hospital. They were always mother and child, etc., etc. So I said this is a great chance to understand healthcare from a category point of view. Because if you establish this category, you would always have the fact that this was established by me, because I was the first one in this journey. And you had cloud9s of the world doing boutique birthing and all. But I did a little bit of research, and but I never could find a competition to Rainbow, because nobody was into tertiary care pediatric health.
Mm.
I said, okay. And then when I met the chairman, he had great visions of putting up monies behind expansion. So that was a magic word for me, expansion. Because that was the same thing when I got into mobile store. That was the same thing. Because companies which have budgets towards spending towards consumer, you get to learn.
Right.
That's where the game changes. So he was pretty happy initial years. He said that, boss, I want to build this brand. I want to take it to various parts, various cities of India, and I want to build big units, which have never been seen before, but with respect to pediatric health only.
Mm.
Now, that's where the category game changes, because when you are actually looking at adult health, you are the so healthcare in India was incidentally or predominantly focused around the breadwinner of the family.
Mhm.
If you look at all setups, all the
Right.
initial setups in government, everything was around the breadwinner. But children were also treated in that same setup. However, there was a requirement of small setups in terms of the equipments, etc. Smaller being in terms of equipments, etc., and suited equipments. This is where I started understanding that that's how this different this journey for a child is versus an adult. So basically, children are not mini adults. They are not. They are very specific, different kind of people. So we want, and also while you are treating the children, you are also treating the parents,
Yeah.
because they are emotionally clued in and totally clued into that whole system.
Mhm.
So I launched close to about 8 hospitals across Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi. So taking that brand to those markets and trying to establish pediatric healthcare into tertiary care setup, where we are looking at now at Rainbow is also doing transplants in kids, which is very very rare. We have a cardiology hospital in Hyderabad, which is dedicated to children. So again, I wanted the journey to be specific for myself. I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand how to take this category down to people, and again connect with the consumer with a different angle. So That was it. And so I was with Rainbow for close to more than 5 years. And after that, Apollo happened. And
Yeah.
so AHL is a very interesting setup. Again, my angle is always about learning how to get to the consumer through different ways. AHL is Apollo Health, is the company that I work for, it's actually a conglomerate of 8 brands. So you have Cradle, Apollo Fertility, Apollo Spectra, which is into the secondary care setup, and then you have a primary care, Apollo Clinic, Apollo Dental, Apollo Sugar, and then you have diagnostics and dialysis. So these are the 8 brands that I manage. All these brands are connecting with a different set of consumers. Wherein Cradle deals with mother and child, Fertility deals with young parents who are trying to plan their family, and Spectra is all about ambulatory care surgery, which is all short stay surgery. So these are all models which exist inside the hospital, but Apollo carved them out because Apollo realized way back that this is where the setup requirements is slightly different. A mother and child, it's a celebratory occasion. A mother is never a patient. A mother to be is not a patient. So she should not be treated as one. This should
Right.
be a very happy and engaging atmosphere where they get all the amenities, and it should be a fun environment, and of course coupled with all the best medical practices, medical setup, good doctors, etc. Fertility again, similar way. The demand of the current society is different. We are fighting different kind of battles. Infertility is also growing in India. So
Mhm.
that brand addresses that. Short stay surgeries are again a setup which are you don't require to stay for longer durations time. They are basically keyhole surgeries or laparoscopic surgeries. Start very short stays and very fast. So those setups were there. Then you had the primary care, which is clinic, again into the primary care setup, which is consults, health checks, you have blood tests, etc. Dental and sugar were treating dental and sugar cases, diabetes
Got
that is, and then diagnostic is so. Again, the fun part was you were getting into multiple service sectors with one company.
Right.
So while I did pediatric and maternity there, here lot of things got added to that. So
Got
again,
it.
the journey what I'm trying to see myself as in healthcare is coming from cosmetology, getting into pediatric health, tertiary care, then getting into everything that is surrounding the hospital today. So that's where the consumer inflow is from, because
Got it.
hospital incidentally is a final destination for very large causes, very high treatments that you
Right.
require, whether it is transplant or cardiology, etc., etc. But these are all setups which are regular day-to-day kind of
Right.
involvement. So that's how the journey has been.
Got
Uh,
it.
I've been lucky, and also in whatever thoughts that I had in mind, they came to materialize because I was lucky enough to get into these kind of brands who have such kind of spectrum of services which is so different. And again,
Right.
I believe that these are the early days of healthcare.
Right.
We are still learning. A lot of
Right.
new things are coming in. Technology is also adding a lot of value, a lot of changes to the system. So incidentally, that's how the healthcare journey has been. It's a lot to do with, again, how do we see or how do I find my consumer through various channels.
Mhm, mhm. Got it. Incredible, Nishan. Thanks a lot for kind of unpacking everything so much in detail. I actually have a bunch of follow-ups for you. The first one, which I wanted to check with you, right? I was wondering, a marketing mix of a clinic or a hospital, because that's not something a lot of people talk about. And I was like, while every aspect, every P is a challenging one, uh, the location could be an interesting one, right? I think any place there is. I mean, it's a big investment. Also, with your chain model right now in Apollo, I mean, there are so many centers you're opening. I think so often. How do you go about that, right? I've heard people talking about restaurant kidhar kholna hai, but clinic and hospitals. How do you decide upon that?
So clinic effectively the retail front of the healthcare setup. And incidentally, the idea is you're trying to get the expertise of the big brand into smaller catchments where the hospitals can never go into. So for just to give you an answer, we have actually had two, three kind of different setups in clinic segments rather. One is that we have the standalone clinics, which are into a small format, which is around 1,000 2,000 SFT. Then you have a large format clinic, which is we call a medical center, which is in a 3 to 4,000 SFT setup. And then you have society clinics, which now we are looking at. We have actually got more than 200 clinics at a point of time in societies which are more than 500, 2,000 flats. So that is kind of a catchment in itself. What you're trying to ask me is how do I kind of open the clinic? So these are the answers basically. You look at large societies,
Okay.
And then you look at large distributed catchments, the older style cities, where you had a lot of independent houses and all, part of, let's say, Indiranagar in Bangalore. So you would have a clinic there. Kormangala in Bangalore, you will have a clinic there. But then you will have the newer age area of Bangalore, which is, let's say, the electronic city, or you will have the Whitefield of Marthalis, where you had societies and societies. So you will just open society clinics because
Mm.
because the idea of the clinic is to be right near the person when the episode happens because healthcare in India is very episodic. Incidentally, preventive health forms a very small proportion of healthcare today. People, incidentally, are, as I said, long time when I started thinking about in healthcare, that people are not looking at prevention. It's always the episode when it happens and you start searching for a healthcare setup. So that's the difference between a clinic and a hospital. You are trying to reach out to people wherein beyond that you can create a connect without episodes. That
Got
even
it.
when the episode happens, you are there to guide them because we don't treat emergencies in clinic, but we then tell them we can arrange a ambulance and you can get into the larger Apollo hospitals at any point of time. And but the fact is that we can also drive our agenda of telling people about how important preventive health is, because
Mhm.
actually, if you look at it, the cost of healthcare goes up because you get into curing your ailments. But if you look
Yeah.
at prevention, the cost of healthcare would be very low. And the fact is, healthcare is also largely insured, which actually also brings down the impact of out of pocket expense. Coming back to the clinic opening, these are the ways we look at it. We look at large societies. We look at distributed catchments with high affinity, where you've got the olden style of the residentials. And then you look at the end of the day, the larger setups, which can be actually the go to destinations, where we
And
have, CT, MRI, etc.
got it. Understood. But like I wanted to know, from a marketing standpoint, are you looking at each of these outlets as a separate entity and creating local campaigns for them, or is it more like a standard all fits one size kind of an approach for just like you said, in the initial thing with Coca-Cola, here top of mind recall karo and it just happens to be in my vicinity, I'll go there. How does it work?
So with Apollo, the advantage is that you are with a legacy brand. And the fact that all our services have an extension of Apollo, the branch of
Yeah.
Apollo, the umbrella of Apollo. So the recall is definitely not a problem. So our thing is that to be present when there is a moment of need. So you've got multiple channels that you can reach out to me for. Let's say you can reach out to me with clinic. You can have a 247 app. We've got a clinic app. So all the verticals basically are smaller setups. We are trying to get deep into catchments, whether be it Cradle, which is again a small hospital of 30 to 40,000 SFT. It's not a large hospital. Similarly, Spectra. They are basically medium-sized hospitals, which has all the benefits of a good hospital treatment, barring the emergency part of it. But then the fact is, it's a very easy in and out kind of a place. So when I'm looking at communicating these facilities or these brands or these services, I'm trying to communicate the advantages that you have and the benefits that you have. Not that there is a challenge when you go to a hospital. It's equally good destination, and they also will obviously give you the same treatment. The fact is, we are more near to you, and the fact that we are more flexible, agile. The fact that you can plan a procedure with us. Hospitals deal a lot of emergency cases. So you had a lot of emergency cases, transplants, etc. coming to them. But for all your planned procedures, we are the place. Whether you want to plan your baby, whether you want to plan a TKR, knee joint replacement, whether you're planning a bariatric surgery, and or a small urological procedure or a colorectal procedure, that's the place we have to go.
Thanks, Nishan, for that. I think get a lot of perspective on how you plan this entire multi-brand, multi-chain, multi-SKUs kind of a setup. I want to touch upon this preventive bit a little bit. My dad's actually a doctor turned a lawyer. He works with a lot of
Wow.
healthcare companies. I work with a lot of healthcare companies, and this is what everybody's problem. I'm working with a pretty big, large respiratory lung focused company, and they're also like, yeah, there are some 100 million people who have these issues, but 40% of them just know, 60% don't even know that they're going
Absolutely.
through this crisis.
Absolutely.
um, how do you solve this? Like, what's in your experience over a decade, what has worked here? Because people are selling fear, people are selling it as a insurance kind of a thing also, that
Yeah.
तुमको वो return भी मिलेगा through some way. They're kind of trying to kind of blackmail them emotionally also. Like, what kind of things usually have you seen work and actually change a person's perspective?
So I think preventive health is pretty still very recent. I think there's a lot of learning to still be had. I don't think we have arrived at something that we know that you click this button and people start opting for it. it's a little hard sell. But the fact is, people still feel that we are being pushy about it. The commercial aspects of the healthcare setups actually they create a notion that it's all about the money. But if you actually think about it, preventive health is the best way of avoiding large expenditures, at least. Because if you get to catch something early, you basically can treat it at times, and the doctor can then guide you in a much better way rather than hitting the episode and then falling short on things. So in a sense, preventive health, I don't think that there is a fixed way of selling preventive health or communicating it. What we are trying to do is build on the fact that can you get a better score of it. So look, if you look at our promotions in fertility, we have taken preventive health into fertility. So we created something called know your fertility score. So what we are trying to tell young couples is that you may plan or want to plan your family at any point of time, whether today, 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, that be okay. But knowing for the fact that what are your current body capabilities, what are your current body system analysis, is there something a cost worry? So why don't you look at getting your fertility score today? And you may choose to plan your family whenever. It is not necessary that if you plan family only, then you should require a fertility score. The fact that it is like a body index score, any score, and the young generation definitely is very much into scores. They understand
Yeah.
comparatives, they understand the so that really becomes a good way of communicating for our preventive methodology, saying that get a score and know that which side of the number you are. So whether you need to be a little bit more alert about certain parts or certain things about your body, or whether the fact that you can take it easy and see that you are taking good care of your body. So essentially, that's what we are trying to tell people, that become proactive. So that's the pro health part of Apollo, basically. That wherein we are saying that become proactive towards your health. Take keen interest into your own health. Don't let it slide away, because it's very easy to lose track of it. The fact in your daily scheme of things, try to ensure that health plays a part by having a pro health attitude. So stay in touch with your body is essentially all our campaigns are trying to communicate this part only, that although young generation or Gen Z is still trying to keep in touch, they are far more alert than the previous generation. They're far more active. Far more communication or discussion is around the healthier part of life, what to eat, especially around food, etc. And we see that we are onto it. We take notice of it. But the fact is, it should not be left just at that. The involvement is should be that you get into a discussion with a consultant, understand with the doctor, saying what should be what the path that you're taking is right or not. The fact that if you're doing a like you require trainers in the gym, basically they just there to guide you, not there to do incidentally kind of preach you always, but they're there to guide you in case you have a doubt in your mind. Similarly, pro health is also like that.
Very interesting. I think I love this idea of a score. I think recently got married, and this also in my head. I'm like, yeah, getting a score just makes sense. So at least you can kind of plan your life. I wanted to kind of reflect. So I was just reflecting upon myself right now. Right, I started this company in my 12th grade. Right at 17 years old. So you can imagine my first few years was no sleeping, no eating, calm karo. But I think I became very health conscious since the last 3 years, 4 years, because of content. To be very honest with you, it was these podcasts and influencers, good and bad, who had a lot of opinions being thrown out, and that kind of got into discussions that okay, apparently we're not supposed to do this at all, or that we're not supposed to do at all, and blah blah blah. And then I did my research, and there is so much content, on top of that. I must say, Apollo actually ranks really well. Your digital strategy there is really good. Whenever I'm asking a question, so do you see these influencers or content creators as a big lever for you for kind of educating preventive measures for at least my generation and younger folks, maybe even older generation, because my mom is on Facebook looking at content creators all the time today. So I wanted to know what's your take with influencers.
I will kind of push the clock back a little bit, olden days, or let's say about a decade back, when data was not so cheap. So where the game changed actually, it's not just what COVID happened. The fact that data became cheaper with Reliance and brands fighting it out and making. So now you have something at your disposal which enables you to consume content endlessly, and that's where the life has changed for you. You're not worried about logging into your mobile and surfing about endlessly about hours and hours, maybe good bad Nobody knows this. Yes, beyond a point, everything is a little bit bad. But the fact is that since data is cheap, you have that ability. So now that you have the ability, who is getting benefit because of that? So benefit is always going to the consumer. Now content plays a role. Who disseminates the content is also important. So the influencer basically plays a role in terms of the power or the authority that they have while telling something. But the fact is, what is the seriousness of the consumer for absorbing it? Now that would differ. For example, as you rightly said, influencers good, bad. People take everything with a pinch of salt. So not if the influencer says something, people are going to believe it because they obviously know about paid promotions. They obviously know about collaborations. It's all there. So it's not that people don't know about it. But the fact is, it's also a new way of reaching out to a certain set of people, and it's helpful. So the funnel I appreciate and understand, and I admire the fact that it is available for us, and it gives us the leverage to reach out to the people very fast and to a specific TG also. But it's also part of the entire marketing cycle. I'm not saying that I can ignore the traditional marketing videos because all sorts of TGs exist in India as of now. You got the parents also. You got the kids who have now become parents, and you got the younger generation, the younger kids, Gen Z. So everybody's hooked on to a different kind of medium. Somebody likes WhatsApp a little bit more. Somebody likes the younger generation. So everything has to play a part. So yes, my budget then does get bifurcated across channels, but I then want to be connected to all sorts of TG because when the family discussion happens on a health case, I would want everybody to have the same opinion at least, or at least have the same thought towards the brand, not different ones.
Got it. Got it. Very interesting. I think that's a great point of view. Uh, I want to jump now into brand collaborations. I believe Horlicks recently, Colgate. I've seen you folks collaborate with them. I want to understand from your point of view, right? What's the strategy here? Is it for awareness? Is it that you are trying to push some other metric? And how do these collaborations between two distinct brands really work? Just keen to know if you can unpack that.
Oh no, yeah, that was you hit upon a very good part of this now, and I'm very excited about these collabs because I actually in my marketing journey I never came across great collaborations earlier, and I always felt that if two brands have the same thought, why don't they pool their resources? Because necessarily you're not cannibalizing anything at all, but you can amplify your voice and become a very strong communication medium. That channel, that campaign that you take might become very powerful because there are two big brands pooling the resource, so people might become a talking point. "Oh, these two brands have come together. What are they saying? What are they talking about?" So we were just discussing, and then we realized that we need to hit upon a specific TG. We need to have a cause to address. So we address the cause of deficiency of vitamin D with HUL. So they said that while it has a product correlation to their Horlicks, obviously, for women, but the fact is that what is the larger issue in play for a healthcare setup? It's that deficiency of vitamin D, which is a big problem because look at us. We're sitting in offices the whole day. We hardly move out. Look at our younger days. Look at when we were kids. We were like out in the open without worrying about sunburn, suntan, or whatever. We were just like enjoying it. But and that essentially played a lot of part in the vitamin or the absorption of vitamin D. You're out there. But the fact is, in today's scenario, and when we did the research along with HUL, we realized 90% of women are deficient, and it was quite amazing, astonishing. And we said that now that gives you a cause to kind of talk about it and tell people that why don't you test it because it helps in absorption of other. It's a very essential part of what you are as human. You need vitamin D, and the fact that if you don't have it, you will come across other health hurdles. So we pooled our resources. They started saying that both brands have a lot of credibility, and they both want to kind of connect with the TG women over the age of 30 because we realize it's a very large cause, and the more you talk about it through various channels, whether to young girls who are now going to be 30, and women who are already over the age of 30, if you try and make them aware that why this is so important, the collaboration works. So it's just that two people with the right thought process came together, and one on this side of the brand, the other on that side of the brand, and they felt that this is the right thing to connect with. It's positive. It is it's for the fact that you're trying to drive a cause, and as I said, it's all about consumers at the end of the day. I nobody can sell anything if it doesn't connect or make sense to the consumer. Whatever you have. Here, I think this was something that I felt that will instantly connect with the consumer. Similarly, Colgate was of the same reference. So Colgate was also big fun about this because they had this thing about gum health. They said that we have a cause of gum health. We feel that people are not looking at their gums that seriously because teeth become very aesthetic. You start looking at the aesthetic side of it, but you don't look at the gum because it is not part of the aesthetics. So it's also a huge part in the tooth decay, etc. And they said that we want to kind of partner with you with this, and we want to drive this cause regularly, try to tell people that be careful and get yourself tested. So the fact that brands also wanted to make testing as a part of their offering, because they can't just say that, and how do you then kind of compare that if I had a problem previously or if I had a low vitamin D, whether after consuming brand, what's happening to me? Am I changing? Whether it is helping me or not? So that also kind of becomes like a good part from the brand of as an offer, saying that boss, we want you to check it today, consume our product, and then see the difference. That what is the difference? So I think that holistically is something that works for collaborations, and I believe collaborations should become an integral part of any brand because it gives you a difference in a way you reach out to the consumer.
Absolutely. I think, I'm seeing these collaborations happening so much often now. I mean, there's the whole Mokobara one. And then rather, I think I really borrow that from what's happening with the Marvel universe or the DC universe, right? Where you pull in like two brands together, and that just makes it creates excitement, it creates revenue. It's just something which is fun, right? It's clutter breaking. I'm like, okay, I finally can see two of my loved brands in one place also. Really hope that that continues to go on. We are at the last leg, Nishant, that of our podcast. So have about two, maybe three questions to ask you now. Getting a little bit more specific now with your marketing or creative stack. You mentioned that there are multiple, brands you are running. So I wanted to understand, how does the marketing function work? Is it that you have a central marketing unit which fuels all these brands? Do all brands have a separate one? And because it's specific, selfishly for my insight also, because I'm into the creative space, how does the creative aspect work here? Is it outsourced? Is it insourced? Do you have a combination of the two? Just wanted to know, how do you kind of create content and how does marketing work across all brands?
Oh, yeah, of course. So basically, we have a mixed approach. To be very honest, we have people in house also because at times you really need some adapts, etc., to move forward. So you have people in house also, and where in certain brands we require, because see, it all also is driven by how the market is. If the market is really fast, then we require outside hands on deck thinking about our brand also. It always helps. Agencies are always supportive. They also bring an opinion inside, and that really we are helps us create something new as a campaign. So we have a mixed approach. We have agencies for some brands, and we have in-house designers for some brand, wherein we have the brand managers who take care of the brand communication, and we have a digital team which drive the agenda of acquisition. So incidentally, it's a very clean carriage or clean deliverables that we have. Brand managers basically think about the consumer connect always. As I said, that's something which I believe that we should all marketers should be passionate about. Saying, are you relevant to the consumer that you're talking to? Are you having enough on your plate in terms of communication that the consumer connects with? And I always believe that less is more. How you can compress and try and convey the core thought fast, because in today's age, in the clutter, nobody is waiting you for your reveal. No, gone are the days of teasing the consumer too much. Today the
Right.
consumer is knowledgeable. They have lots of insights themselves through various research mediums like Google, etc. So the idea is to get right to the point, be crisp and clear, and drive the benefit. Let the consumer know that this is what you stand to gain, and try and be truthful. Put the facts out, and I think a combination of this essentially for me forms the core of the communication. Less will always be more. The fact that you have a lot of negative space in a creative is not a fact that you're wasting real estate. The fact that you are just trying to be very close to what you're trying to communicate, because there are brands which are at different stages of their product life cycle, or different stage of their growth. So for Apollo, the brand is already known, so I can choose to have a different approach. But within
Mhm.
Apollo, I have brands like Dialysis, Apollo Dialysis, which are pretty new. Apollo Fertility are very young. So they need to have a different sort of channel of communication or different pace of communication. That's why I choose to have agencies, and that's why I choose to have something in house.
Super, super. Thanks for unpacking that. I have a follow up on that one, and as somebody with your experience here, since you've been working with so many agencies over your experience, what's your advice to agency founders, right? How can you tell me, how do you shortlist a great agency from a good agency, right? What is that tipping point? What really makes you kind of trust an agency when it comes to pitching or giving them a work order?
I believe that their involvement really matters to me. I'm not waiting to hear somebody crack a great thought. I don't think that's how the discovery happens. Because when you onboard an agency, they also discover the brand along with you. So,
Hmm.
two things really play a part. And I believe that everybody is very capable. I don't feel that an agency is good, bad, ugly. It's all about people and how open both are in terms of trusting and understanding each other's area of business. So the moment the agency is open to absorb the communication, and if the brand is also having space to onboard an agency with due time, because if you onboard an agency like yes भैया कल आ जाओ और चार creative pitch बता दो, then let's close it. I mean, it's impossible, right? And what are you trying to do? You're trying to essentially have a disturbed start initially. So for me, with any agency that you onboard, size does not matter, but they should be approachable. And as the time goes, I think the longer associations are great, because agencies also start believing, understanding your consumer through your point of view. They also bring in their angle, which is, I think, is the very core part of why you onboard an agency. You onboard an agency because you want people to have a different view of thinking, different way of thinking to what you can do. They should not just become an extension of your thoughts, because that's just crazy. And that's where the brilliance of marketing kicks in. I think if you have minds, thoughts working, and cooking ideas, and then kind of challenging each other, saying, okay, can this work or can that work? I think that's brilliant. That's where the manager and the agency really comes into the play. For me, that really is the relationship.
Super, super. Wow, Nishant, I think you sound like the perfect client for a lot of us. So thanks for giving that get that dope. Before I go to my last question, I have to ask you a question around AI. Right?
uh,
It's the biggest elephant in the room,
yeah.
and we all know it's there. We embrace it. Blah blah blah. Wanted to know what's your opinion here in terms of, do you think there are some opinions flying around in the market which you think are absolutely rubbish, and are there any opinions which you think people are not even thinking of in terms of the actual potential of where AI can take you? I believe every smart marketer I know, have has a lot to share. So I thought I must ask you this too.
I mean, it's a great space to have actually as a marketer. As I said, any new invention or any new tech that comes in is always great, and it's just how you inculcate that into our overall thought process. For me, AI is another feature that you can leverage. Can it answer everything that you want, or you have a question for? I don't think. Even it has a brilliant IQ of 155. People are saying, yeah, today chat GPT has an IQ of 150. Great, so you have a great mind working for you. But
Yeah.
not all great minds can discover anything ahead of time. All discoveries took time. Everybody failed 100 times and then discovered something. So I guess the journey of AI also cannot be fast forward, or cannot be fast forwarded, and it cannot just start popping out answers to you. I don't think there are easy answers when consumers and different varieties of consumers are concerned, but it can be a great tool for you to kind of crystallize your thoughts, as a good bouncing board to have, and maybe start helping you in kind of fast tracking small things. Like if you're trying to create something on a contextual basis, it can also come in as a voice, but human intervention can never be taken away, because that's where the unknown lies. And
Mhm.
I believe Marketing is a discovery of the unknown in various sort of ways, whichever
That's a
channel
great.
you take it from.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I was discussing this with some friends recently, and we were like, it's a AI is like the best intern you can have.
Yeah,
It's smart, it's diligent, it'll work hard, but
yeah,
context ही नहीं है क्योंकि experience ही नहीं है. So you really need
exactly.
to kind of check out
It,
if they can do a good
yes,
job.
I mean, imagine that big companies bring out products, and at times they don't do well. So they would have put all the AI like Google Lens didn't work.
Yeah,
So what AI wouldn't have suggested that this would be? I'm sure AI would have also given positive about some point of time saying it's great. But at times when it comes to the testing ground, even AI can't prove something because again it is as you rightly said and very beautifully put that it's also it doesn't know. It is also a good intern, which is I try to put, like us trying to do its best to just cope up with whatever is being thrown at it.
absolutely. I think I fully agree with your point of view here. We're almost at the end of it, so I'll just ask the last question. A lot of our audience is also founders, young founders, or rather founders of young companies.
Sure.
And healthcare as a segment, is generally also kind of popping up. Shark Tank, I think, has dedicated episodes now of just products in this space.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a question around trust, right? You've been at places where there's been a legacy, but if I am a founder and I'm doing 0 to 1, I don't have a lot I can talk about trust, right? There are companies like Tootsie now which actually need to kind of do an operation also, or rather do some something technical also. How do I, as a founder, build trust as somebody with over a decade worth of experience? What have you learned are some low hanging fruits for me to establish trust with Indian consumers in a healthcare setup?
I think Indian consumer or like any other consumer wants to be heard. So I think the feedback is a very good way of gaining trust. Keep your channels open. Don't try and avoid conversations or confrontations. Have them. And I believe that you should have confrontations openly so that a consumer starts believing your standpoint, that you stand for something, you believe in the brand, because one person or one thing, one organization should always have believe in one thing, that's their own products. So if you can instill that into the consumer will start trusting you. And it only comes from the one thing, that keeping your channels open, listening to people, listening to your consumer always, and responding, acknowledging, and at times telling them that maybe it didn't work. Because for me, any new product, any product, whether 50-year-old, 60-year-old, if they hit a point where they get something found against their product, Nestle just had something, acknowledging the fact that there was something like this is the most important thing. And the fact that if there is some truth in it, they should be the first ones to say and claim, yes, there is something. And the fact that, don't worry, we take onus and we will avoid this and we will ensure that you get the best of it, and we were maybe not in the right place. So I think the current generation really believes in the fact that if you owe it up and you immediately believe, say that yes, there was something right or wrong with it. So clear the air. And that's where I think the feedback, connecting with the consumer with any brand, and keeping the channel open 24/7 is most important. In fact, I believe that the top management should be the most exposed to the people, to consumers. They should talk. They should not put executive agent at the front. They are the ones who should pick up certain points and connect back at the end of the day with some consumers. That's beautiful, and I have done that myself, and I've learned resilience from it. Because here is somebody who's trying to take out a time and talk and tell you about something about that the good or bad experience they've had. Listen to them because they might solve something big for you.
Fantastic. I think love those perspectives, Nishant. I personally can correlate that to even beyond healthcare. I think if we're able to do some of these aspects also, especially in 0 to 1, because
Yeah,
the products are mediocre, because your market strategies are mediocre, leadership knowing this and having a two-way communication really helps you kind of make a person think, yeah, these guys care and they are truthful, and that does
absolutely.
a lot to build trust. So that's our time, Nishant. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for giving me over an hour today. I know you're a very busy guy, so it really means a lot. And I hope you had a good time.
Yes, absolutely, Kavan, and I'd love to get in do this again maybe at some point of time, because many times you have all these thoughts flying around, but when I talk to youngsters like you who are ready to listen in, and having a conversation yourself is quite relieving, and for me also, I also evolve. when I am able to put my thoughts out, sometimes I also get to know maybe things are not exactly the way I think they are. So, I loved having this conversation with you, man.
Super, super. Thanks once again, Nishant. And hey, for everybody who's tuned in so far, I hope you also learned a lot. I learned a lot about healthcare and marketing and much beyond. If you want to listen to one more expert, one more CMO, stay tuned, like, share, subscribe, and we'll have another guest very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks.